Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of the Archipelagic Audio Club. I'm Sophia and
I'm Kai, and we are the co-founders of the Motley Collective. If you're new to our programs, we are an arts and writing collective based in Singapore and the Southeast Asian region. We work on curating programs and projects to conversate across multiple disciplines, interests, concerns in between spaces.
yes, that's right. So far, we are very proud to have brought to you programs such as the Enfleshed Reading Club, which last session was just about 2 months ago, wasn't it?
Yes. It was on the 29th of June, and we ended on a high note, so to speak, with a rich discussion on women's bodies, invisible labour, and gendered cultural work, particularly in the Indonesian film Uni.
It was a film that prompted a lot of discursive points indeed, and I still think about some scenes in the movie, and of course the colour purple.
Yes.
So here we are again, not a reading club proper, but an audio club instead.
Sophia, why don't you tell us more about the Archipelagic Audio Club, what it is, and what it hopes to achieve?
Right, so the Archipelagic Audio Club is a new podcast series by the Motley Collective, hoping to discuss and to apply some of the theories of the Caribbean philosopher Edward Glissant onto works of literature which originate from or which explore our own archipelago of the Nusantara region and hopefully beyond. In particular, we are hoping to delve deeper into his theories of archipelagic thinking.
What is archipelagic thinking exactly?
In exact terms as I can describe in a podcast, I suppose I will say that the framework of archipelagic thinking emphasizes interconnectedness, fluid identities, and relationality across islands, thereby challenging rigid boundaries, colonial frameworks, and continental-centric perspectives. So what this means is that there can be new, fresh, and liberating ways of looking at the narratives coming from or exploring this region without feeling like we need to speak about them in overtly nationalistic or culturally specific ways.
What are some examples of that?
As a case in point, perhaps I can mention that when we talk about works of literature, here, often, the discussion would veer towards, this is what makes a novel the great Malaysian, Singaporean, or Indonesian novel, in terms of its breadth and scope of discussion into its politics, its history, and social, cultural, and national identity. In the same way, more recently, some would refer to the discussions about the great diaspora novel from the region as well. When a Singaporean or Malaysian leaves their point of origin, for instance, and contends with living in the States or in London.
Right. How is it different with archipelagic thinking?
With archipelagic thinking, I believe we can further complicate these discussions and expand its networks of influence to the world surrounding it. By situating these works in the post-diaspora world, we can question the very rigidities of thinking that we need to write and define what should look like Singlit, Malaysia Lit, Indonesia Lit, or Filipino Lit, and etc. The hope is that we can take these narratives for what they are and move forward with even more sophisticated questions about the fluidities of identity, place, and even of existence, and not what we think a novel from Singapore or Indonesia should look or feel or be like. And one day, hopefully, we can call it just literature.
That makes a lot of sense, since maritime Southeast Asia is a collection of many countries, many of them island nations such as the Philippines, Indonesia, and Singapore. But also because many countries in the world today are rather widely globalized and deeply engaged with global culture. For example, the shows and music coming out of London, New York, or Hollywood, and even Seoul. But what can our listeners look forward to in our audio club discussions? And can you tell us more about our collaborators for our podcast?
Of course. So to answer your first question, our podcast series consists of 5 episodes, including this one. And in each episode, we hope to introduce a particular literary work or two, through which we would discuss archipelagic concepts that are the most relevant or the richest to discuss in the work. For example, in today's podcast, we will be discussing Intan Paramadita's The Wandering. Intan Paramadita is an Australian-based Indonesian writer of fiction and short stories, and her novel, The Wandering, has won awards such as the PEN Translation Award and the Tempo Best Literary Fiction. This novel seems perfect to me to try and apply an archipelagic reading because it's experimental, innovative, choose your own adventure structure creates a kind of forking path structure within the novel, forcing readers to create relational connections not just across chapters in a book, but also across the characters and realities of the different possible pathways and choices. Now, on to the second question about our collaborators. The Motley Collective is extremely excited and utterly privileged to have two collaborators to run this podcast series with. The first, our followers should be quite familiar with by now, I hope, the novelist Lu Hui. Hui had recently just worked with us on our first flash fiction magazine, Intermezzo, and this is still available via our Instagram and WordPress pages.
Yes, get yours now.
Yes. And the second collaborator, who will be new to our followers, is the veteran storyteller, docent, and all-round expert in all matters Nusantara, Hafiz Rashid.
Woohoo!
Yay!
So exciting, we can't wait.
Yes, me too.
Without further ado, shall we have you read a short excerpt from Intan Pramadita's The Wandering, and then continue with more questions after?
Yes, let's do it. Intan Paramadita's The Wandering. Beware the gifts you accept, associate your elders, but it's too late. You ask for the package, a present that comes with a curse. Demon Lover has granted you a pair of red shoes. Demon Lover arrives as you're desperately contemplating flight. It's the night just like all those nights before, when you felt as if your limbs were lashed to the bed. Those nights when your mouth was sealed tight, though it was your ears that you wished were plugged. But alas, far from frightening the racket, they funneled it into your eardrums, cramming, jamming noise into networks of blood vessels that slowly hardened to the onslaught. The buzz of televisions, the cries of street vendors, roaring motorbikes, blaring car horns, the clack, clack, clack of trains. Distorted by Morse loudspeakers, raucous calls to prayer marked the passage of time. Occasionally, you'd get a bonus, Islamic singing from frenzied matrons or a sultry dangdut performance on Independence Day. The scorching weather had grown claws, it was raking them across the blackboard. All this chaos mocks those who place hope in a dynamic rhythm. Some cities move faster than others, forever reminding you to board quickly as they won't stop for long. A train, you're looking for a train. But here, you know you're going nowhere. You've grown roots, you're gathering moss. You believe that certain settings can lure people into suicide. Reading teaches you that such places tend to be beautiful and bewitching. The River Seine, the Golden Gate Bridge. Jakarta, though, is so hot, so dull, so ugly, its face too foul to provoke action. But Jakarta is where you live in the city full of thwarted suicidal urges.
Thank you, Sophia, for that lovely excerpt from Intan's novel. Perhaps we could start with a question about why you've chosen to read from this particular segment of the book. How does it enrich our understanding of the archipelagic concepts you mentioned earlier about relationality, fluidity, and rigid boundaries?
So I've chosen to read from the first few pages of the novel for a few reasons. The Wandering, as a novel told from a second-person point of view, has a structure akin to a choose-your-own-adventure novel. You follow the protagonist on her travels or adventures after she makes a deal with the devil, so to speak. But she is cast to wander the world and through her life forever. And this wandering, of course, reflects ultimately the reader's choices. So even from the beginning, you can sort of sense that there is an intense sense of nomadism happening here. The protagonist travels beyond the region of Nusantara, specifically Jakarta, Indonesia, with its myths of Malin Kundang, for example, a story from West Sumatra, to places like San Francisco, New York, even Amsterdam, with the more familiar reinventions of myths and stories to a Western audience, such as Cinderella and even the tale of Odysseus. I mean, this is a wild ride of a novel. And nomadism, of course, is a powerful trope in Edward Glissant's theory of archipelagic thinking. Other than that, I think there is a dark surreality to the start of the novel, suggesting anything is possible when there's the devil involved. And doesn't this fit very well with our region of maritime Southeast Asia, with our obsession with supernatural things and ghost stories, whether you believe in them or not? I mean, this is what we grew up with. But of course, it's not just about that. There is that central tension in the opening scene about being at once trapped and wanting so much to be liberated and free, in which the protagonist is willing to do anything, even getting cursed by the devil. But the question to ask is, what is freedom really? And what is a home? In this novel, I think these questions become really complicated to answer. But perhaps it's because there shouldn't be such easy answers in the first place. Not for us in this acutely diverse region of Nusantara. For instance, for us, I think one's home is not necessarily one's place of birth or nationality, and one's identity is more than just one state of circumstances, whether in Jakarta or in Singapore or elsewhere. In one of the more abortive endings of the novel, which happens quite early on depending on the choices you make as a reader, in a chapter titled "The Third World Cannot Imagine Outer Space," one of the last few lines in the chapter reads, and I quote, "There are no answers to your questions," end quote. By the way, there are so many different and layered endings in this novel, which makes it really exciting and really shows how the novel acts as a kind of archipelagic fiction for me. Finally, due to the rich intertextuality and multiple genres used in the novel, including in one chapter where it's almost like a mini screenplay, whatever answers you think you found through reading this book about place, about gender, about identity, they are simply not possible to answer in any fixed or straightforward way. Often, questions and answers are intertwined and interrelated, like a root or a rhizome, a theory explored not just by Edward Glissant, but also Jacques Deleuze and Félix Guattari in 1,000 Platoons. So for these reasons, this makes this work a piece of archipelagic fiction for me.
Which thematic issue or character or plot development in the book do you think challenges an assumption that others might have about literary works in Southeast Asia? Or even that we as Southeast Asians might have of ourselves?
I think when we think about the form of the literary novel in Southeast Asia, it's almost natural to ask, how does it contribute to the greater idea of the nation or boundaries? Previously, I referred to the great Malaysian, Singaporean, or Indonesian novel, and this is something that all writers writing about maritime Southeast Asia or who are from maritime Southeast Asia they struggle with today. Are we going to write the next one of these novels, or are we going to write a diasporic novel, that is a novel about leaving our familiar shores and moving to a place like New York or London or Sydney? I mean, there is this whole generation of writers before us who have contributed so much to this scene that somehow contemporary writers can feel both a need to make ourselves distinct from this generation or to feel like they have to pay homage to it. I think it is a constant struggle that we see in many novels. But what I do notice is that in recent times, more writers do feel free or more liberated to write that they think what they think should be in a novel rather than what they think should be in a Malaysian or Singaporean or Indonesian novel. Just to name a few, we have writers like Intan Paramaditha, of course, and Eka Kurniawan from Indonesia. And from Malaysia, we have Tash Orr, Prita Samarasan, Zen Cho. And in Singapore, Jemima Wei, Rachel Hing, even Ernie Stanley, who are all writing fiction or literary fiction with less baggage, so to speak, about thinking about nationality and identity, but more about the human condition of what it means to be in this world, to thrive in it, and to have relationships with the world around us. It's a new wave, I think, and reading and talking about them through a post-diasporic lens, which I'm proposing as an archipelagic lens, might do critical understandings of these novels some good. A very brief example, I would say, is in how Intan Paramaditha's The Wandering rejects any fixed notions of familiar themes like place and identity, by having her readers explore the narrative in many different places, almost like a travel novel, but not really, okay, and not by lulling her readers into a comfortable place. Even at the end, there are innumerable pathways and innumerable endings to the novel, and it reflects, I think, the endless possibilities and also uncertainties of living and persisting in this interconnected, hugely diverse realm of maritime Southeast Asia, and also the globalized world.
You have another excerpt that you're able to share with us, right, Sophia? Your own short story, The Last Diver on Earth, that might give us more to mull over in terms of archipelagic concepts discussed so far.
Yes, it's a little strange to talk about my own story in this way, but I suppose through my PhD, I kind of have to explain why the work that I'm writing is a kind of application of archipelagic thinking as well. So, in the story, which is set far in the future of climatic disruption, and where traditional culture must contend with corporate greed and helpless governments, the protagonist Rumi inherits a set of special, almost superhuman freediving skills from her mother. Early in the story, however, her mother dies, and it is up to her to find out why and how. The story, I think, reflects a world of shifting possibilities. And is this protagonist going to remain exploited like her mother or her traditional culture, or does she have the ability to buy a bit of time for herself and then hopefully outsmart them? The ending of the story, I think, which has gotten a bit of flack, but it doesn't actually allow the reader to make the choice for the protagonist either, which is what I think archipelagic fiction does. A lot of things are very fluid. The identities of the characters in the story, the places that they belong, the values that they subscribe to, is difficult to pin down, and it's more about the relationships that the characters have to the world that they live in, the people that they hate and they love, and the places that they are from and where they hope to go to. The story doesn't allow readers to kind of like really have a very good grasp, a very firm grasp of things, okay, but just semblances of it, echoes of it, and that's what I think makes this story part of archipelagic fiction. Perhaps our readers will have a read of the story, which can be found online on Granta, as well as a read of Intan Paramaditha's novel, The Wandering, and share with us what they think about some of these things, about the value of reading this narrative through a post-diasporic lens rather than the usual nationalistic or diasporic lens. Sophia Maria Mas, The Last Diver on Earth. When they finally found Ibu, she was laid out on the beach. Draped in a shroud of slimy rusted kelp, she looked like a giant glutinous rice dessert encased in steamed bamboo leaves. It wasn't unusual that she was naked. Here, we dived naked. Off the coast of the lesser Sunda Islands, between the seas of Banda and Flores. But seeing her like this, I remembered Ibu's promise. She had told me she wanted to be the last freediver on Earth. She forbid me from going into the water we both love. But whoever really listens to their own mother? With our lives so intertwined with the sea, Ibu and I had always lived with death as our fickle, wearisome neighbor. In the good years, death kept himself. When things were bad, we would see him wandering the coast and picking at debris, at bodies, as in the aftermath of a tsunami. Sometimes we would see him watching eagerly as sharks prowled the shallow, near-shore waters for easy pickings. Well, not too easy, since we Bajau learn to swim before we walk or talk. but easier than, say, venturing into the dark, frigid depths without coming across a meal for weeks. Still, I never expected I would come across my own mother's body on land rather than in the sea. Thank you everyone for joining us for this first episode of the Archipelagic Audio Club. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to sharing with you our next episode coming soon, featuring our special guest, Hafiz Rashid. Thank you, and we hope you'll tune in next month.